processing everything. What he said to me stuck to me. It felt like my tiny little inner voice was speaking to me, like I was regaining this source of control back in my life, like a friend. Actually, it's something I wanted to hear for a very long time. I needed it.
Shirley, how good it is to see you. How have you been?
I've been good, sir, thank you. I did a lot of thinking. I just wish I knew these practices sooner.
This is all a learning experience.
Right. I mean, well, maybe I wouldn't accept it back then. I didn't accept anything when I was younger. I was too defensive. When I was in 6th grade, start of middle school, I became a whole different kind of person. I really, truly lost myself.
What made you feel different?
It was the change of the atmosphere. When you're in 5th grade, you go on these tours to these middle schools, and all the kids look nice. The ambassadors, staff looks nice, the school looks pretty decent. It's very accepting. It felt like a movie for me. Everyone's friends with each other. They're playing around, and man, I wanted to go to middle school so badly. I would go clothes shopping, and I would wear, well, back then, for me, I loved to wear these Justice outfits. I would get, like, the Paris and the Paris pants, and I would, like, dress very, like, I liked the French style stuff, but I wanted to still look cool, so that was, like, my outfits. And then I would wear, like, the Skechers was a big thing, and all the girls would wear, like, the Simply Southern shirts. When I was in 8th grade, I got my very first Converse. I had the white ones, but I also had the red ones. They were like the high tops. Oh man, I remember how excited I was when I first got them. I would never take them off. I just remember how excited I was to wear them.
Did that help you achieve what you were looking for?
It didn't. Well, temporarily, actually. I became so obsessed with maintaining my image, and it caused me to be very distressed. In fact, I was bullied even more because of it. Girls made fun of my clothing, the boys would call me ugly. I had an incident where these girls in this field threw sand in my eye and then laughed it off. And I thought, coming out of elementary school, things would get a little bit more better. It did, but it didn't. I just remembered the poor memories than the good memories. I was so upset that I couldn't live like it was in the movies, where I couldn't be as cool as Junie B. Jones or Judy Moody of those characters. And I would cry at night before going to bed. I was starting to hate myself. And then something odd was happening. I was forgetting things. Like my shoes, my homework, my lunchbox, my backpack of all things. And on top of that, I had to check every room I was in just to make sure I didn't forget anything. My brain felt foggy. I was late. I mean, I'm still kind of late to everything, but I've gotten better. I first started my therapies at the time.
Did seeing this therapist provide a coping skill or a diagnosis?
I first learned about OCD at the time. I didn't know a whole lot about it. When I would tell people I had it, they didn't believe me. So I started not to believe it myself. But I noticed how I was. And I would always be in my head a lot. I remember the anger and this feeling of me that I always have to be in control. I was so exhausted.
Do you remember your sleeping patterns?
I sure do. I was very tired all the time. I would come home and just plop on the bed. I would fall asleep in class every single day. And this lasted all the way to high school. I took so many naps during the day. I constantly had headaches and I felt sick all the time. I didn't know about OCD too much back then. I didn't think this can tie to a mental disorder. The therapist at the time mentioned anxiety as well, but I refused to believe it.
How so?
To be honest, I didn't think you could have more than one disorder.
Symptoms often show in many different labels. OCD, anxiety, and depression are all very similar. Each disorder can lead to each other, compounding the symptoms and making them more severe.
So, it's best to learn to cope with each one differently. Or if you group them together and you cope with them, to find a medium within with each one. I mean, later on my doctor mentioned ADHD, and she did mention I was on the spectrum, because I didn't think I was, but I guess now that I'm plugging in the dots, I moved all the time. I had to rock back and forth in my chair. And I know there's different things of what makes ADHD, because it's not just moving and having constant energy. But when I would get home from school, I had to walk around my room. Not just once, but maybe 20 to 30 to an hour to get my energy out. And then I could be able to sit down and talk to people, because if not, I had all this bottled energy and I couldn't speak to anybody. And if I didn't do it, I would go in crazy. I don't think this says anything to tie to mental health. When I was younger, and because of all the bullying, I created this fictional world in my head. That's where I thought I was really crazy. Because I would take everybody from my realistic standpoint of the world, create them in a animation version. So everyone would still be in reality, but I would put them in my brain, and then I get to control what I say and what I look like, and I look like this fictional character I created. And I would use my right hand, my index, my middle, and my ring finger to control the character I created. It made me feel so good. And I think that was the source of why I didn't lose hope. That was the world that I could depend on to make me feel calmer. But I think my obsession with it got to the point where I focused on that world too much, that I expected so much in the real world. But it was my coping skill. And I still do it to this day. Like the talking to yourself, but I'm not talking to myself. I'm talking to myself, but I'm talking to somebody else, but they're created in my head. I would imagine myself as a character in a storyline and complete these quests along the way. In my head, everything was perfect, and I think deep down I didn't accept myself for having a mental disorder. I thought if I created myself the way that I should have been, that was the way I should live my life. And it helped, but it didn't, because at the end it was just masking it and not dealing with the actual disorder itself. But now I know the difference between reality and imagination. But it was a quick escape if I needed it.
That was your coping mechanism.
I sound crazy. I'm sorry.
Not crazy. Everyone has a different method. Some travel, some decorate, some read, watch, design, and even daydream. Most kids play with toys, so the imagination is still rooted.
Now I know I shouldn't have been so hard on myself back then. I felt so off because I could never fit in with everyone else. I will admit, I did have a lot of fun in my world, letting go with everything. It saved me.
You're already a step ahead.
A step for what?
For coping with OCD.
By what?
By realization. Part of the battle is the pressure you put on yourself. When your brain gets overwhelmed, it retracts. It looks for an escape. Your escape is your world.
It makes sense. But Dr. Basel, I was so unfocused because of it.
I want to give you this paper that explains 6 natural ways to help ADHD and ADD. Many clients of mine only take medication. However, here are 6 ways to help with ADHD without just relying on medication. Some of the symptoms include short attention span, distractibility, disorganization, procrastination, impulsivity, and restlessness.
Yep, I definitely have that.
These papers I am giving you are based on what you scored on your first session, where you took a test on where you felt at that time. And at the end of all these sessions, we will redo the test again to see if there is a change from severe to moderate.
I do remember that. I remembered I scored severe in depression, OCD, and the symptoms it asked me.
With this paper, there are ways to open up to the individual that are more than just meditation, medication, therapies to help cope with the disorder. Number 1, cut back on sugar, gluten, dairy, and any artificial dyes and sweeteners. Slowly add them back to see the difference of the pull. Coffee can help with the brain functions, but can also default as well. Just be wise on how much caffeine you're consuming and how much sugar you put in. Natural is the best route. Too much can make the body high in adrenaline and make the body tired.
I would drink coffee to stop myself from being tired, but I also felt so jittery. I felt even worse when it was all over. It's like I couldn't win. It's stressful.
Try opting for a different kind of caffeine. There are caffeine alternatives that you can add to your water and keep you energized without the artificial sweetness. It keeps you going without the crash movement.
Okay, I'm definitely gonna try it. Thanks.
Number 2, increasing your protein intake and lowering your carbohydrates. Number 3, walking. Walking outside for 20 or 30 minutes will help calm the mind. The sun has a natural effect that will help with that. Number 4 is a sleep schedule. Setting a sleep schedule that fits your needs helps calm your mind. Number 5 is lower the intake of screens. It strains the eyes and causes migraines. Number 6, vitamins, which are a wonderful way of maintaining body levels like zinc, magnesium, omega-6 to roughly about 1,000 milligrams. Make sure to consult your physician. ADHD, like many disorders, affects the brain, and when we take actions and investments, it makes changes in the healthiest ways. Over time, the severe becomes moderate to feeling like you don't have it at all. Medication should never be the only thing with coping with the mind.
When I first saw my therapist, I started taking medication right away. Which did help. It blocked, and I kind of felt like my mind was frozen in time. Which was good, because I didn't feel so over the edge. But I wasn't really exposed to a lot of coping mechanisms. I mean, I kind of was, but it wasn't like this. When I was older, I started reading stories on how people deal with their coping mechanisms and how they deal with their mental health, which provided me a comfort, like I wasn't alone.
Some learn better by seeing or hearing a similar experience. ADHD or any type of disorder is not the same in every person. It differs, but you can see patterns. Here's a tip. Choose one of the numbers on the paper for a month and keep track of how you're feeling. A journal. I see a lot used. With this 90-day journey, it'll give you activities and to document how you feel.
I really appreciate the tip. I definitely want to cut back on sugar, since when I'm feeling down, I tend to go to it the most. I want to journal on how I feel. And I feel like that can really help me. Thank you very much.
How do you look back on your 6th grade year now?
Now, I don't see a lot of imperfections like I did when I first came into the session. I remember the challenges, but I can't forget the good stuff. I remember when I would go see movies with my friends, because OCD and my disorders got the best of me in middle school. And I wish I could just go back and hug myself saying, it's okay, you don't have to feel that way. But this is all part of learning. I allowed it for so long to dictate my life, but I see it differently.
I believe you deserve credit. Support drives us.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for the support. I can do this. Thank you so much, Dr. Basel. I'll see you next month.